Welcome to this explainer. Parenting is, well, it's arguably the toughest job in the world, isn't it? Today we're diving right into a profoundly beautiful framework from the Islamic tradition all about raising pious kids. In this framework, you're not just a caregiver, you're a spiritual guardian. It's built entirely on this prophetic metaphor of the parent as a shepherd. You're someone who carries this immense, heavy, yet incredibly merciful responsibility for your flock.
Now, you might be wondering, when does this whole Islamic parenting thing actually begin? It's totally natural to assume the journey kicks off right there in the delivery room, the exact moment you hold your newborn for the very first time. But if we actually look closely at classical Islamic pedagogy, that timeline gets completely turned on its head. The real work, it starts long before the child ever takes their first breath. Take a look at this really counterintuitive wisdom from the classical scholar Ibn al-Qayyim. He basically points out that a child's character, right down to their baseline temperament, is often just a direct reflection of the habits they see in their parents growing up. Because let's face it, kids absorb everything. So a parent's own work of self-reflection and self-purification isn't just some side project for the weekend. It is the true, literal first step in a child's education.
So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover 1. Parenting as a sacred trust. 2. The foundation of educating yourself. 3. The child's pre-birth rights. 4. Welcoming the newborn. And finally, 5. The first 2 years.
All right, Section 1. Parenting as a sacred trust, specifically understanding amana and fitra. Let's just dive right into the theology here.
In the Islamic paradigm, children are absolutely not viewed as our personal property or just mini extensions of ourselves. They are an amana, a sacred trust strictly on loan from God. This is rooted deeply in the Quranic command where believers are told to save themselves and their families from the fire. So what does this actually mean for us? It means a parent is ultimately accountable on the Day of Judgment for how they preserved and guided this incredible, precious trust.
And that brings us to this brilliant illustration of fitrah. According to prophetic tradition, every single child is born on this innate, pure disposition. They inherently recognize the divine. So as a parent, your primary job is not to force some alien identity onto your kid. Instead, you're basically a bodyguard. Your job is to protect, preserve, and fiercely nurture this inherent purity that they already possess right out of the gate.
Moving on to Section 2, the foundation, educating yourself, and specifically, self-purification before procreation. This is where things get really practical.
Like we said, kids are literally like sponges. They learn primarily through observation, which means parents have to prepare themselves first. This process is called tazkiyah, or self-purification. Look, if a parent struggles with negative traits like explosive anger, maybe vulgarity or gluttony, the child is going to mirror those exact traits right back at them. They see right through us. Shedding these negative habits and modeling good adab, meaning etiquette, is absolutely crucial. Scholars actually warn us that it's incredibly difficult to unlearn the behaviors we internalize from our parents when we're young. So fix it in yourself first.
Okay, Section 3, the child's pre-birth rights, the framework of rights before conception. This is fascinating because in Islamic jurisprudence, a child has defined rights way before they are even born, totally reframing our timeline.
When we look at these proactive rights, it really changes the game. The very first act of good parenting is actually, drumroll, choosing a righteous, pious spouse. I know, it sounds super early, right? But this ensures the child's right to genetic and moral purity. From there, the child has an absolute right to life and sustenance. As parents, we have to trust that God is the ultimate provider. That completely eliminates the fear of financial ruin that historically led to neglecting or even harming the unborn child.
To really anchor this right to life, the Quran explicitly prohibits the tragic pre-Islamic practice of killing children just out of a fear of poverty. The verse is incredibly powerful and reassuring. It tells parents, "We shall provide sustenance for them as well as for you." It's a rock-solid guarantee that the arrival of a new soul comes packaged with its very own divine provision. No need to panic about the bills.
All right, on to Section 4, welcoming the newborn, prophetic traditions at birth. Let's look at exactly how Islam physically and spiritually welcomes a brand new soul into the world. So, the Prophet Muhammad established 4 beautiful sunnah traditions to really celebrate and protect the newborn. First, the adhan and iqama are softly called into the baby's ears. Second, we have tonic, which is providing a tiny taste of sweetness. Third is giving the child an honorable name. And fourth is the akika, which is this amazing celebration involving a sacrifice and shaving the baby's head. Let's break these down. Just think about the profound psychological and spiritual impact of this first step. By softly reciting the adhan in the right ear and the akama in the left, the very first sound that registers in that tiny baby's developing consciousness is the kalima, the declaration of faith and the magnification of the Creator. It's an instant, beautiful connection to their ultimate purpose in life.
Now, take a look at the practice of tahnik. This is where a small piece of a softened date, or maybe a little honey, is gently rubbed onto the newborn's upper palate. But here's the catch. It's not just about giving them a sugar rush. Tradition dictates that a righteous, pious person should actually perform this act. It serves as the child's first sweet nourishment, beautifully bridging their physical needs with a deeply spiritual blessing.
And naming. Naming is a monumental rite. The Prophet heavily guided parents to choose beautiful names with really profound meanings, especially favoring those that show loving devotion to the divine, like Abdullah or Abdurrahman. He explicitly told people to avoid names that mean bitterness or war, like Murrah or Harb. Why? Because a child's name literally shapes their identity and how the world perceives them for their entire life. It's a huge deal.
Which brings us to Section 5, the first 2 years. Nourishment, halal, and bonding. We are now entering the critical early infancy stage.
Let's just take a quick look at this timeline to visualize the journey we've been on so far. We literally started before conception with spouse selection, right? Then we moved through the rites of pregnancy, we celebrated the birth, and now we land at the super crucial 2-year weaning milestone.
During this time, a child has a specifically defined right to maternal breastfeeding. The Quran emphasizes that this should last for 2 whole years for those who want to complete the term. And this isn't just about getting vitamins and nutrition. It creates this vital, totally irreplaceable bond of security, love, and emotional regulation between the mother and the infant. It's foundational.
And when it comes to nourishment, Imam al-Ghazali actually issues a pretty stark, serious warning. He points out that the body and the spirit have this incredibly tight relationship. Because of that, consuming only halal, meaning permissible and pure, sustenance is absolutely vital. He warns that haram, or impermissible nourishment, physically becomes a part of the growing child. It permeates their very fiber, and that severely impacts their spiritual state and their temperament down the road.
All right, conclusion, the foundation for the future. To wrap up this explainer, let's look at the ultimate goal of these foundational early years.
So here is your foundation checklist. First, you have to educate and purify yourself. Number 2, uphold the child's rights before they're even a thought. Third, welcome them with those beautiful prophetic rituals at birth. Fourth, nourish them with pure halal and deep compassion. And above all, treat parenting as a sacred amana. Why does this matter? Well, the sources remind us that a righteous child who prays for their parents is considered an ongoing charity. It's a lasting legacy that literally outlasts this world entirely.
So we've laid the groundwork for the first 2 years. But as the child begins to speak, walk, and actually interact with the world, the challenges multiply, don't they? So how do we guide this pure, innate fitra into the complex social and intellectual realities of childhood? Well, that is exactly what we are going to tackle in Part 2. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next explainer.